Political science professor Ryan Salzman is here to weigh in on what is happening in Washington and around the world. And specifically, I remember last week when I heard about the strike on Syria, I immediately texted you and said, wow, we have a lot to talk about. We're going to get to that here in just a moment. But first, the big news today with Judge Neil Gorsuch, who's going to be sworn in as the next Supreme Court justice.
It happened. It happened. And if you look at the number of days from nomination to confirmation, it was really right in line with previous Supreme Court justices in the process bearing out. Now, of course, the process was much different once it was clear that there would be enough votes to filibuster. The Supreme Court nominee, Judge Gorsuch, Mitch McConnell immediately flipped the switch to the nuclear option, as we like to call it, so there was no filibuster in play. But again, as we step back and look at it, while that will change things fundamentally into the future, it really makes it look like every other nomination process. And honestly, Judge Gorsuch is he's an excellent jurist and definitely deserved to be on the court, just like Merrick Garland did as well. So it's nice to be able to move on from that. So
it doesn't necessarily affect how the Senate will move or work going forward? I mean, it worked out for this particular nominee, but should we be concerned here at home?
I think that as of right now, we can feel secure that they're not going to try, that is, the Senate's not going to try to suspend the rules for all votes. But clearly, each one of these steps is another step in the direction of fundamentally changing how the Senate works. But none of that, again, as we've talked about before, none of that's written into the Constitution. So this is up to them to decide. But as of right now, until the next Supreme Court fight is in front of us, we probably won't see the effect of this really bleeding outside of those lines.
Well, talking about making a choice without necessarily consulting everyone, that was the Syrian strike that Donald Trump actually ordered last week. And there were some, political people who were upset that he did not actually get their permission first.
Right, well, because that's what he said time and time again when he was on the campaign trail. Any type of effort, any kind of strike in Syria needs to have congressional approval. And here we are some months later, and surprise, surprise, he's not doing what he said in the campaign. But to be clear, that's part of the powers of the presidency, as they're written into the Constitution, is that he is the commander-in-chief. He can tell the military what to do. This is a prime example of that, and it's very much an isolated event. That is, it's a single airstrike. I mean, you could say this is bad. There's no indication that there's any real strategy in play. Instead, this was just a single event, but it does call a lot of things into question, particularly about what he said in his campaign promises and how they're bearing out now.
Why has the tone changed so drastically? We're talking to Nikki Haley, talking the U.S. ambassador to UN, talking about how removing President Bashar al-Assad from power is the priority right now. There's been sort of a switch.
Well, what we've seen for the last few months since Trump has become president is he does things, and then the administration seems to develop a strategy around what it is that he decided to do. So in this instance, he decided to move forward with the strategic bombing of the airfield. And now it seems like the people supporting him are trying to figure out what that really means. And so talking about, we have to get Assad out. But we also have to keep ISIS out, and we have to keep Iran out. And so that Syria, I don't think that Syria can exist at this point. But again, I think what we're seeing is President Trump decides to do something, the administration at that point has to react and has to try to craft some kind of strategy that seems to be reflective of an overall plan, even though it's debatable whether or not there was a plan or if he saw some pictures, which, I mean, I'll be the first to say were grotesque, made all of our stomachs hurt, a lot of pain involved there. But he saw those, he moved quickly, and as a result, the administration, like Ambassador Haley, is left to try to figure out what this means in a larger sense.
Okay, and I'm sure we'll talk to Ryan about that more when he's here with us next week. Thanks again for giving us some insight. We appreciate it. We'll watch as Judge Neil Gorsuch is sworn in today. I was going to say thrown in, but no, he's going to be sworn in today. Thanks so much, Ryan. We appreciate it. We're going to send it back over to